Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you are and whatever that is for you. I hope it's good. And it's really okay if it's not. That's welcome too. If it's a bad morning, you don't generally wish people a bad morning though, do we? Or a bad afternoon. Well, let's just take a few minutes in case anyone else wants to come on board. Hey, Brandy. Hello. It's nice to have you all here with us today for our second installment of forgiveness. Thanks for the heart there, Brandy. Appreciate that. Very nice to receive. So you're going to have a slightly different flavour this week in terms of what we're going to be doing. Last week was a lot of information, and it's really okay if that hasn't all sunk in. We will kind of be going over that again during the course of the course. But today is going to be much more focused on, looking back at the past week, looking at the practice, seeing how that has landed for everybody, and then we're going to practice again. We're going to stay with the root. That's the guidance. Bodhi's happy about that. I don't know how that's going to land with everyone else, but you must have called that in, Bodhi, I think. There's been a little. Actually, there hasn't really been any umming and erring from me over the week. It's felt very obvious, actually, for myself that we're going to stay with the root in terms of the practice. And why is that? I don't know, is the answer. It feels like it's the foundation. And as such, it's really, really important. And it feels like it's an opportunity to be with the root in a way that is loving and is empowering. So we're gonna continue with that. Does anyone have any objections? Bodhi, do you have any objections to that?
I'm all in. I felt that it would be amazing to continue with that. It's been so powerful. So
Good, really
yeah,
good, good. But I am
yeah,
open to
yeah,
objections if
awesome.
there are any. But we will be moving on to other areas and to other opportunities with forgiveness. But the focus at the moment really is self forgiveness, being with this energy of forgiveness and beginning to understand its power, and also bringing a spotlight to the effect of judgment. And of course, the great trap with judgment is to judge it. Right? This is the great trap, is to pathologize judgment itself. Is to say, oh yes, well, judgment is very wrong, and we really ought to stop doing that, right? And we can build all sorts of layers with that, which is a very easy place to go, and that's okay too, right? It's about releasing ourselves from these these skins, if you like, getting through the layers of judgment to the cause, the core issues. What we're going to do today is we're going to break out into rooms, and just check in with each other on a one-to-one basis about how the past week has been. Now, if you have practiced forgiveness with the process, then you can share about how that's been for you. If you haven't practiced, which is perfectly allowed as well, it's really okay, you can share a little bit about that. And a question that we could drop in is, it's like, I wonder, is there something that's got in the way? I've been too busy. Okay, I understand, but like, has there been something, like if you've moved towards the practice, or even if you move towards the practice in this moment, like what arises in the system. So there's just a little exploration of what arises in the system when we move towards forgiveness or your experience of forgiveness this week. After that, we'll come back into the main room. We'll have about 5 minutes each way to share about that. Then we'll come back to the main room. We'll have a little space for any more sharing. And it may be that we start to identify some parts within individual systems that are, you know, forgiving or unforgiving or holding on to judgment, and we can start to work a little bit with those, which could be really helpful, I think, at this stage. And then we'll be heading more into practice. We'll talk a little bit about what's coming up, and then we'll go back into the practice. We're going to have an hour and 15 minutes today, because I'm aware that half the group are needing to get onto another call. Okay, so we're going to have an hour and 15 minutes, and then that will give you 15 minutes to get onto your next call in a timely and relaxed manner. All right. Okay. Now, is everyone happy to be put into a room with somebody else? If you're not, you can send me a little private message in chat, and you could say, I'd really rather not, and I can keep you out of there. So I just wait for those to come in, and I set up a few rooms, and we'll go in there, and we'll have 10 minutes to share, 5 minutes each way, and we'll see how we get on from there. All good? All good. See you in a little while. I'm going to say no. we'll, we'll come back to you, Tom, in due course. If you have something to share, it'd be great to hear from you. But if anyone has anything to share, this is a space really now to kind of just interact, share our experiences of forgiveness as it is at the moment, and we can go a little bit deeper into the process and what might be in the way of that at the moment as well. Does anyone want to kick us off? Oh, look, we got like Bodhi got his hand up first there. I think he was quick off the mark. So over to you, Bodhi.
uh, yeah, I've devoted most of my spiritual time to this, and it's couldn't be more perfect timing. Just the transition, just in case I've moved to Hawaii after living overseas for a long time. So new job, just um, everything. I've let go of everything in the past to create sort of spaciousness, what I've done. And this week, just being with the recording, um, I aim to listen to it 3 to 4 times a day and stay with that and breathe into it and breathe. I mean, really allow that to be more important, spirit to be more important than getting a job and getting a place to stay. And my mind wants to get a place to stay, get that survival stuff in action. But I've allowed things to come through. Yeah, I've allowed things to come through. And there was one night especially that I had all these things line up. It was like a lineup of all the interactions with people where I had judgment with myself, with childhood things. It was almost like they were lined up, and I would just go to each one and relive them in a different way, like a fight with someone in high school, for example. Somebody calls me out, and it's like, hey, could we just talk about this for a second? So kind of replaying it and then filling it with light and then moving on and letting it go. And that was really powerful. But yeah, just being with everything. And I've noticed my judgments thinning. And I've noticed when other people are judging that I can ask them about that in a way that's not judgmental and say, well, what's wrong with that? So, well, those people are looking at their cell phones at the beach in Waikiki. It's like, isn't that neat? Like it's kind of cool. And it's not, I'm better than them or what they're doing is wrong, but how about looking at it this way where it's not a judgment. So anyway, it's been really powerful. Thank you so much. I couldn't be in a better place now with all of you. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Bodhi. That's really, really interesting. I love this idea of the judgment thinning and the judgments on other people's judgments, because I know that that can really grate me, when I'm around other people who are judging, and I can be really judgmental of of that, and be in that kind of righteous, kind of like I am above you because I can hear how much you're judging. Of course, I'm over there judging the hell out of them, like in my righteousness. But that's beautiful, Bodhi. That's really beautiful to hear, and it's lovely that that happens at that time. Yeah,
Can I add just a quick thing to that to
yeah, of
just
course
spark
you
something?
can. We have time.
Thank you. The people that I'm with are massively abundant. I mean, I a guy that I was coaching with, his parents are staying in like a $20,000 per month place. And this is an issue that I had, and I think this is completely connected to the root and my judgment of people that have a lot of money and the love that's coming. I'm getting, I mean, people are just giving me things. It filled my refrigerator yesterday. I mean,
Hmm.
just gave me all kinds of stuff. And to listen and be with them for hours and feel stuff come up and then just say, no, this is all about love. There's this money thing is not. So I'm letting go of this massive issue that
Mm,
I've had with money, massive. And it's one after the next. Ophthalmologist comes, picks me up, takes me to the Elks Club. We have dinner. It's all love. It has nothing to do with that financial. Yeah, so that it's
mm,
miraculous. I all I can say is it's miraculous. And I'm in tears a lot. This past week I've been in tears quite a bit. So thank you.
mm.
I'll be quiet now.
No, no, no. It's really great to hear this, Bodhi. I love that. I mean, it's deeply resonant for me, and I don't know if it is for others as well. I can see some nodding heads around this idea of, you know, yeah, yeah, like a sense of injustice in the world, of money meaning something, or lack of money meaning something, or whatever it is, and how we divide and construct that in our minds, right? About what people are, who people are, how people are, based on these societal, ideologies. Really, it's fascinating and deeply resonant for me. So it's beautiful to hear. I'm having my own journey with that as well, which I'll share about later, maybe if there's time. But thank you, Bodhi. That is awesome. That's
Thank
so
you.
good. So, so good. I love this idea as well of working with the root instead of moving towards these survival pressures. And I know that that's something I've worked with in my journey as well. Of mine was with debt. I had a lot of debt and a lot of pressure to work, get a job, do all of those things. And my guidance was like, no, sit in the pressure, right? It's like the phone's going, they want their money. It's like, I haven't got it, It's like, what are you going to do? It's like the world saying, you got to go and get a job. My guidance saying, don't get a job, and just sitting in that discomfort, that the crucible of that, just that, like, what, feeling the pressure of the world, right? Feeling that pressure coming in, squeezing and squeezing and squeezing and squeezing. And it's like, well, actually, it's not my truth. And it wasn't until I learned to relax in the crucible of that then it was like, oh no, you go and get a job, it's fine, and it's really interesting to watch how these survival fears would predominate, and there's a lot of pressure from judgment in that, right? That I'm not a man in the world. I don't have value. I don't have worth without these things. And it's like, well, is that really true? So yeah, I really hear you and feel your journey at the moment, and you're smashing it by the sounds of it.
Mm.
Fair play to you. Good work. Really good. Sinead, did you want to speak?
Yes, please. Thank
You're
you.
very welcome.
Mm. Um, I've had the most profound week. Um, I've been listening to the channeling alongside the practice every day. And the first thing was I thought I'd ask Spirit what the actual core judgment was. And what I heard was that it's the judgment of being unclean, stained, not pure, that I actually need forgiveness in the first place. So it's that was profound. I could see the lie that I was carrying, that I've always carried. And Spirit seems to wake me up in the about 3 o'clock around that time, because it seems to be the time of the night where I'm able to receive more, or more open, or something. And I could feel the lie that I've been carrying, and I was adamant that I'm not carrying this lie anymore. I'm just not carrying it. It's done. And then the following night, then when I was breathing during the night, that 3 o'clock time again, and Spirit showed me that I'd never been fully in my body, that I wasn't actually fully in. And I was shown all the different times in my early childhood where I felt it was not safe to come in. It was actually not safe. Even before my birth, it wasn't safe I didn't feel safe to come fully into this human experience. And I was just in awe about that, because like I've been on this journey for since 2009, and I had no idea I wasn't fully in my body. And everything made so much sense, and there was all these different experiences, and I could see why I wasn't fully, why I didn't come in fully. And Jeshua was just alongside me, showing me all these differences. It's time now to come fully into your body. And I could feel the energy moving down my legs and down through my feet, as if something was pulling me in, like grounding me in. It was just like, and I don't fully understand it, but I just trust it. That is, this is where I'm supposed to be, and with coming in, just the most profound peace, and just feeling as if I was home in my body, if that makes sense. And relieved to be in, and feeling safe to be in. And so it was, and I'm still in just that experience of nearly grounding properly into my body. And my body's very sore of my muscles and bones and everything. And so I'm stretching with that and feeling the need to be on the ground a lot of the time. And yeah, and I just trust what I'm seeing, and that's what, and I feel as if it's not done. I feel as if the breathing into my root chakra, I still need to do more of it and keep going with that. And I don't know if maybe breathing into the root chakra is going to maybe affect the other chakras, but certainly for me, this is like my foundation. It's, I need to come fully. It's nearly like I had one foot in and another foot out. Not
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the and just the different insights, like with Dorothy and the red shoes, and like lots of Spirit seems to show me a lot of pictures. Like I get kind of pictures with things, and it seems to be the way I learn. And yeah, and it's just profound, and just, and I feel as though I feel so much light when I'm breathing into the root chakra. It just feels like my whole body is just filling with light, and it's just expanding out, and it's so spacious and euphoric, and yeah, and so that's where I am in a sort of a nutshell.
Wow.
That makes sense, or um,
It does make sense. It makes perfect
yeah,
sense to me. Yeah, it really does. I think that yeah, there's a lot of correspondence here in the group, I think. I love the Dorothy's little red shoes. And I love that. It's like click your heels 3 times, right? She clicked the heels
yeah,
3 times to go home. You
yeah,
know, it's like the heels, yeah, like it's a grounding experience. Her little red shoes, right? They were red like the root
yeah,
chakra, right? It's
yeah.
really interesting. But, yeah, I really resonate with this, especially the not being fully grounded, not feeling safe to be fully here. I think that that's such a common experience. It's certainly an experience I'm very connected with. Um, and yeah, this coming into the body. It also reminds me of this. You know, you said you really feel to keep breathing into the root. It reminds me of this. You know, this. I think it's in one of the Jeshua letters where he talks about the fact that there's no there's no end to that,
Mm,
right? It's like, and I always think like, it's okay, so I can be Christ, right? But can I walk on water? And the answer is like, well, I've tried in the bath and it didn't work, so probably not at the moment, right? So it's almost like there's levels, right? Like I can be Christ and I can know myself as Christ, but there's a continual dissension of
mm,
soul of Christ into form that is unlimited. Like there's an unlimited capacity for that movement and for that spaciousness to open inside to receive ourself into this vehicle. I think at some point the vehicle just dissolves in light. I think that's what happens when it comes to a certain energetic, a certain frequency, and certainly that's recorded in quite a lot of traditions, that can happen. But it's really amazing what you're sharing.
mm.
And yeah, it was interesting having the channeling next to the for those
Oh,
who weren't on that channeling, I will share it with the group, because it is connected with this course in many ways, and it's interesting this idea of the that judgmental belief that's sitting at the core of the root. And
yeah,
Yeshua was really saying that there's a judgmental belief that sits at the core of each chakra that denies the truth of our own experience. And getting to that in the root, I know mine is very much about worth, in the root chakra, and it's interesting how that then expresses in the world,
yeah,
through feeling that. And it's so interesting. I was thinking just before the call how the only thing that we truly fear is that our lies are a reality. The only thing that we truly fear is that these judgments at the core of these chakras are real, and we do everything we can to try to get away from what is essentially our own creation, our own judgment. We become victims of our own thinking, of our own beliefs, and that's all we can ever be a victim of. You can never be a victim of anything but your own thinking, and that's such a profound reframe in the mind. It's like, oh my goodness gracious me, or maybe I should stop that. But yeah, it's beautiful, Sinead. Thank you so much. Thank you. Mariana.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you, Israel. I was talking to Tom. Uh, we haven't catch up for a while since Scottsdale, And he actually came with a really, really good point. And I think everyone can actually resonate, from the human perspective, is like when this actually stops. Because this is what happened to me when I was a teenager. Particularly, I was questioning like in what space I'm actually holding truth when everyone have their own perspective on things, right? Because Tom was saying, well, how, you know, everything that we do is a judgment, literally everything. And that's what I said to him. Well, my experience is that yes, that is actually, like we were saying, remember, Israel, when we're talking about, well, we are here because of judgment, and where do we put the stop to this? Because and how we can be in the world without making a judgment, because this is the thing, the thinking mind always wants to know where do I stand, what do I do if I don't have a judgment of things of what is right or what is wrong. This is what we were talking, and I said, well, it's probably a really, really long, maybe long, I'm saying, I don't know if it's going to be long, it depends on each of us, but to dissolve every judgment, we have to be so courageous and to be truly vulnerable, 100%, not fearing to show ourselves what we think or what we are here right now. And I think that's that dissolving to the point that we can touch just with the consciousness itself, right? And that was my experience, there's just that pure consciousness, all embracing that we are everything and everyone. That is at the core of absolutely each of us. But but when we are experiencing the body and the little mind that is opening judgment of everything, it can be very daunting. It can be very daunting. But the only way is just dissolving and hopefully to get to that space as much as we can, even if it's not on an ongoing basis, but to be in the gap and try to receive from that gap the guidance. I don't know, what you think on that as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that that coming into that gap is essential for a start. I mean that is absolutely essential. That gap is who we are, and that gap is our connection to love and to self, and it is only from that place. And I really emphasize this. It is only from that place that we can facilitate forgiveness. It's I wrote on the group page to Pragati. He asked a question on there. It's probably got lost somewhere in the thread, but it's kind of ironic, right? That in order for us to dissolve our blocks to love, right, we have to be love. So it's like how do we be love if we've got these blocks to love? It's like hang on a minute. And of course that's the beauty of separation. That's what we've created, right? Is this perspective. But what we've done is we've created these little pockets in mind. We've created these little fenced off places in mind, and we've used judgment to create those fenced off places in mind. And we can project ourselves in there, but we're not obliged to remain there. The problem is that we identify very strongly into these places, and actually judgment becomes something that we think in those places we need, because we think that judgment keeps us safe. And it was interesting because this came up in my conversation with Brandy in the breakout room. There's a perception that I need judgment. It's like, what happens if I let go of judgment? It's like, oh my God, I'm going to be a doormat. Right? People are just going to walk all over me. Right? They're going to take advantage of me. They're going to do whatever they want. I'm not going to have any boundaries. I'm not going to have a say in what I want, what I don't want. But this is what these places in mind do. They imagine that judgment is the only way to keep themselves safe from the effects of judgment, right? That's the joke about it. And so, we operate in the world, and the world is a soup of judgment. I mean, we are all swimming in a soup of judgment all the time that we're identified in with these little places. and it doesn't taste good. All right, this soup, it's not a it's not a good soup. So how do we operate in the world? How do we operate in the world? And of course the answer is discernment. And there's such a difference between judgment and discernment. And there's this idea as well in parts that I give up my power if I let go of my judgment, right? And I need judgment for, you know, if somebody's coming at me, right, with a judgmental attack, right, and like it's like it's matching that energy, right, with judgment and anger or ferocity or even violence, right? It's like it's that I, in some parts of myself, believe will keep me safe. Like I have to protect myself with judgment. What is the retraining in a way is that I can have boundaries that are inspired by love. I can be in love and have my no, right? This is what we lose sight of. Right, is this kind of strange interpretation in places in mind that says that love has no, like that love is just this mamby-pamby strawberry jelly energy, as Joshua calls it in the way of mastery. Like it doesn't have its own containment or boundary, and of course it really does. And a loving boundary can come with tremendous power and force as well. But it does so with an open heart. That's the massive distinction, that it comes with an open heart. What else it comes with is it comes with the power of heaven. It comes with the power of the whole of creation, because that no is aligned with creation itself in that moment. So this is a retraining that has to happen in mind for parts of us. And this is where we have to start looking at parts work if we want to fully allow the energy of love through our system, because there are parts of us that are going to be holding on to the idea that judgment is essential for safety. Now, if you've got a 3-year-old, right, who's holding on to, I don't know, a shield and a sword, right? So you've got a 3-year-old with a shield and a sword, and this 3-year-old thinks it's absolutely dependent on this shield and this sword for its protection and its survival. And you say, hey, give me that shield and that sword, right? That 3-year-old's going to feel like ridiculously vulnerable and exposed and at risk. And it's not fair to do that to that 3-year-old. There has to be some form of dialogue that takes place. There has to be some form of communication. There has to be some kind of education that happens in the system for that 3-year-old to understand that there's another way, that it doesn't have to defend itself with a sword and a shield. Of course, we see this reflected outside, right? This is what's happening in the world, right? Is the world is populated with toddlers with Kalashnikovs, right? This is it. We've got a world full of 6-year-olds who have their fingers on nuclear buttons, right, and are terrified and living in supreme fear. And the reality of that is that's the internal projected, and it's the internal of each of us projected. And the decision in mind is the only way to keep us safe from judgment is to judge. And it's exactly what we started this call with, right? It's like, yeah, the trap is to judge the judgment. And the reason we do that is because we have to try to keep ourselves feeling safe from the effects of that judgment that we've created. And instead of going, oh, let's bring some dissolution, let's bring some forgiveness to the roots of this, to the judgments that are underpinning the entire structure of our creation and societies and all the systems therein. And all of these systems are held together by judgment. Right? Look at the justice system. Like the entire justice system is based on judgment. You know, look at the way that nations interact. It's all based on judgment. Everything is founded in that way. And yeah, we say that the only way to deal with this in creation is to judge it. And as Joshua says, you plant an acorn, you're going to get an oak tree, right? you start putting judgment out into creation, you just get more judgment, right? It's as simple as that. So this is the profundity of forgiveness. And this is why we're looking so deeply into the root chakra, and we'll look into the sacral and the solar plexus in this course as well, because that's where the core of this is. And this is how we transform not only ourselves, but everything. The whole of creation changes through the willingness and the courage to stop judgment. And that's going to happen through subtle negotiation on the whole, and a lot of love in the system. And a part of that is this loving discernment. It's like, you know what? No. Or even like, no. But it's with this open heart. It's a very different quality of energy. A very different quality of energy. But it's also why I love the Wheel of Consent work, because the Wheel of Consent work with Betty Martin, and we can touch into that as well, is all about learning how to get in touch with your yes and your no. And without clarity in that, you can't truly express love. And I think that when we do fully release judgment, then very naturally what arises is a collapsing of the system. Right? It's a very interesting phenomenon, and it's something I've heard Dick Schwartz in IFS talk a little bit about this. That he's identified that judgment plays a role in the relationship between parts. And the way that Jeshua's always shown it to me is atomic bonds. So when you start looking at the subatomic level and the atomic level, you see that there are bonds between things. There are bonds of attraction and bonds of resistance. There are bonds that repel, there are bonds that attract, and they're all judgmental. They're all formed by judgment. And in the self, we have these different molecular aspects in mind, you know, these different molecules. Like, oh, there's my 6-year-old molecule, and there's my 3-year-old molecule, and there's my 14-year-old molecule. And we've got all these molecules in mind, and there's bonds of judgment, because the 3-year-old and the 14-year-old, they do not get on. Right? Because the 14-year-old is sick of that 3-year-old behaving like that, you know. Oh my God, he's so sycophantic, and he's, why can't he just like toughen up like this, you know? And the 14-year-old and the 3-year-old's terrified of the 14-year-old. So there's this judgment that holds them in isolation, and that's really what judgment does in the system. Is it holds everything in isolation, and it's through the dissolution of the bonds that then things can start to collapse in. And when the bonds all collapse, the system collapses. The whole of creation collapses back into the light, the simple photonic light that it is. And then we know ourselves as that, because there's nothing else to know yourself as, because you've dissolved the illusion. That's the way that Jeshua has shown it to me. That's the way I see it. And that's the way I experience it. And I experience that through bringing forgiveness into the system, and then experiencing the effects. And the more that I practice forgiveness, just like Sinead was saying, just like Bodhi was saying there, the more I experience the light of my own beingness. And it's like, that's the litmus test for me. It's like, oh, I do this practice. What's the effect? Or the effect is this. That corresponds with what I'm seeing in mind about the nature of reality. Yes, it does. Okay, well, this is something here, you know? Does that make sense? Did that answer your question, Mariana, or not really?
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, I'm just, listening really like intensely. What I see and how I've seen it, is that all the judgments that we do first, they start in us, in me, and whatever I'm seeing in others is my own judgments. And so basically, how I've seen it, is that from above, is that all judgments, they come from all different perspectives of the self. You know, is just a massive, is one, broken in 100,000 pieces here in the multiplicity, judging each other, which is completely unloving. And people actually, how my experience is like, I'm judging you, but actually in reality, even in the mundane things, I don't even know about your life and what is going on with you, with your feelings, with your thoughts, your experience, your soul journey. And I'm making a judgment because you didn't give me a call, let's say for Christmas, rather than saying, okay, I'm open judgment on this, but do I really know what's going on with Israel, why he didn't give me a call, rather than already attacking myself, which is actually I'm projecting onto you, and just say, why you didn't call me? I'm sure that you had the time to do it if you really loved me. Right? That is what everyone is doing with everyone. Yes or no? We're doing that. And this is the thing. And on not
Yeah.
even going on a higher level, what the totality is God, that's the only truth, is that each of us is making all the time a judgment of what's going on them. First, we do it on ourselves, but that's projected onto someone else, and we don't know what's going on with the other person, really.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I just want to qualify for the group that I didn't even really know Mariana before Christmas, so I'm innocent. Let's just clarify that. There's something I'd love to introduce here, and of course you're absolutely right, Mariana, that there is a field of judgment, right? And that field of judgment is the world, right? And that's happening internally, and then we share that with each other. But what I'd love to do right here and now is invite us into this shift, this subtle shift in language. And language is so important because it's through language that we shape our reality experience. Everything starts off at the level of thought, and we think in language, and that then becomes what we experience. So the language that we use is really important, and the language that I want to invite us into is a parts language. And it's as simple as saying, like, it's the difference between me saying, I am in constant judgment in the world, right? And saying, I have parts in my mind that are in constant judgment in the world. Okay? So I am in constant judgment in the world, or I have parts that are in constant judgment in the world. The importance of this is around identity. Because when I say that I am identifying as if that is me and who I am. And in reality, and this is what Mariana was talking about, it's like above, we'll use these spatial terms, in this plane, I'm not in constant judgment. In fact, in this plane of reality, I've never judged anything. And I've never known a judgment. And that's my reality, and that's who I am. And so this just this simple shift in language can change everything. And Yeshua says in the text, he says that, and I'll paraphrase a little bit, but it's as potent as this: all suffering, not some suffering, all suffering is as a result of identification. So if we turn that around, which I always love to do with Jeshua's work, the release of identification is the end of all suffering. So if we're interested in releasing ourselves from suffering, and I don't know about anyone here, but I'm kind of interested in that, but I also want to put my hand up and say that I have parts within me that are really not interested in that. I have parts in me that love a bit of suffering, and that's okay too. And I try not to judge them, and I'll bring some forgiveness to that later. So there are parts of me, there are parts in my mind, there are parts that I've created that judge. And this can apply to everything that we do. Everything we think, everything we feel. I have a part that feels angry. I have a part that fucking hates. I have a part that is terrified of life. Right? Just feel the difference between that and I am fucking angry. I am so full of hatred. Right? The difference is profound internally in my system when I use that language of identification as if that's who I am, when in reality and truth, it's not who I am. These are just experiences that have been created in the field of mind. And I have immersed myself into these experiences to the extent that I have imagined that I've become them. So I have fooled myself into believing that I have become the experiences that I've created. And shifting the language can help me to release myself from that identification that causes all of my suffering. So I would suggest that's probably a good thing to practice. Right? I have parts that I am experiencing this, right? Therefore, I must be blended with a part. The irony is that myself has never experienced the world, and the world has never existed. Because it's just been this imagined thing, and it's played out in this field of creation. So yeah, if I'm experiencing something, say I've got a thought, I have recurring thoughts. Who else has recurring thoughts come to them in mind? Yeah, okay. Great temptation is to be like, oh my God, there's something wrong with me, right? To be thinking that consistently, there must be something wrong with me, right? You know, it's like, go and kill yourself, you useless piece of shit. It's like, oh my God, there's something really wrong with me. If I was more together, I'd go and get myself some medication, you know, to help me deal with myself, you know, this pathological problem that I am, right? And of course, this is what happens, right? It's this identification with the voice. This is me, when it's not. This is not me. It's not who I am. This is something that has been created in mind in order to elicit a certain experience that at some point I've been interested in, right? At some point in the history of my soul, I've been very interested in hearing a voice that tells me to kill myself, that tells me to hurt people, that tells me to hide from people, that tells me to succeed in the world, that tells me I have to survive, that tells me all these things, right? It's not who I am. These are my parts. Mariana.
Sorry, I'm very curious in what you say, because what happens with those people, for example, that they have, you know, like schizophrenia, for example, or they
Yeah.
have, and I would like to know that how they can, you know, from the spiritual perspective, how that actually we can see that, and how, you know, a person who is suffering with that mental health, for an instance, can, or bipolarity thing or whatever, right? How they can actually come out of that.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting because in the field of, and I'll talk about the spirituality in a little bit, but I'll talk about the psychology first. Schizophrenia isn't a term that's used anymore. They use the term dissociative identity disorder, or DID. And the breakthrough with IFS, specifically and particularly, which has some success in working with people like this, is this reframing of that picture. And the reframing is that we are all schizophrenic, right? That's the reframing. We all have, to some degree, a DID. It's about degrees, and those degrees are of separation between parts in the system. For example, I might have a part that's really angry with another part, but that part's not so angry that it's going to want to continuously murder that part, right? Because that's the only way it can feel safe. Now, a part that has that kind of tendency might be that way because it has experienced such extreme trauma that it behaves in deeply challenging and radical ways in order to try to create a sense of safety. And if a system has that level of trauma, then it can create such a profound schism, judgment, and separation between parts that it can present as what would be labeled DID. So it's not to say that people don't have that experience. They absolutely do. And for some people who have experienced extreme trauma in this life, sometimes in previous lives, or through the ancestral line and the genetics, then that system can be experienced as so profoundly fragmented that an identification with one part can be so deep that other parts don't even know that there's a consciousness there, or that consciousness isn't even aware of these other parts. And so it can become very, very pronounced and profound. You know, from a spiritual perspective, of course, that's an experience that is of some interest, right? Soul is pure curiosity, right? It's just so wonderfully curious about everything, and all of these experiences are fair game. You know, it's like, I know that in my soul, I remember a moment in clarity as soul sitting next to another soul who was a friend, who is a friend, and saying to them, let's see how far we can take each other from the experience of God. Right? And we've just been like, that's brilliant. Like, what an incredible idea, you know? And then we've gone through and we have just spiraled through lives in which we have, like, in the most brutal ways, tortured each other, murdered each other, psychologically abused each other, like physically assaulted each other. I mean, just like murder after murder after murder, betrayal after betrayal after betrayal, like just the most horrific torture on every level of being as this exploration, you know. So soul will soul will through curiosity go into all sorts of places in creation, and those are experiences that for a soul are completely valid from a human perspective, just as all of those experiences were from a human perspective the deepest tragedy. You know, it's a horrific experience. I mean, a purely horrific experience. And something that we are learning to transform and heal by releasing self from judgment. Because it's that judgment that holds in place these fields of separation and these requirements or seeming requirements in our parts to know what revenge is, to, you know, get our own back, to experience these things. So, the intention very much was to get lost in the dream. I mean, make no mistake about that. That was clearly the intention of soul, and we've all done that brilliantly. And now we're learning to find our way back, and forgiveness is front and center of that journey. And I love the IFS for this. I love the IFS because it takes the labeling and the pathologizing out of the psychological field. Because if you tell somebody that they are schizophrenic, right, that reinforces a feedback loop of identification. Oh, I am these voices. I am this one that tells me that I need to kill people or do whatever. I am that. And with that comes crippling shame. And that locks the whole psyche in this field. And it will go through many lives like that, spiraling, 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 spiraling. Because you just take mind with you. And then you see the impact and the effect that you've had. And you'll collapse into greater and greater shame, which in turn will mean that you need to judge more and more and more to get away from it. These are vicious cycles of creation. Which is why we come back to, what am I truly believing about myself in the depth of my root? What is the judgment there? And am I ready to forgive? Am I ready to bring this field of forgiveness into this? Are there any questions on that? Tom?
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Tom.
Uh, yes, I have a question on that. I thought that was fascinating when you were talking about the soul curiosity has to kind of go into these different chambers and these different experiences and the way you said it was really interesting because it was like the soul doesn't judge the goodness or the badness of the experience. It's just the experience itself. If I was hearing you correctly, and then, so if I'm not, let me know, please. And that what it brings to mind is the neutrality of all events, the neutrality of everything, including these judgments. And this is what Marianne and I were talking about. And by the way, Marianne, thank you for your insights and your wisdom. I really appreciated everything that you were telling me. And you didn't get a chance uh, she didn't get a chance to do her 5 minutes. She was explaining to me, helping me out with my issues, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. So this neutrality and
Yeah.
so what I'm wondering is, does it come to the point where there is no definition of good and bad? It's all good. It doesn't matter what the judgment is or what the experience is. It's all good. And or is that in opposition to what you were talking about earlier with discernment? Because there is a big difference between discernment and judgment. Judgment obviously is attempting to say, this is good, go ahead with that. This is bad, stay away from that. Discernment is a little bit different beast. And I was
It is.
so I'm wondering if I do I have the right idea? Are you trying
Yeah.
to? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything you've said resonates in my heart, Tom. It's yes, exactly. The only thing that I might wonder about is if we don't just get rid of good as well, right? And then we just have like a field of light in
That's right. Right.
in
Yeah.
which we just and then we can and then but then discernment simply says, discernment doesn't say good or bad, right? Discernment says yes or no, right?
Right.
That's the distinction, right? Judgment says good, bad. Discernment says yes, no. Is this an experience I want to continue in? No.
So
Judgment
my
says, is this a judge? Is this a something I want, or it's good, or it's bad, right? This is the distinction here.
I like that distinction. And so my question is it possible to have a discernment and say yes or no without a judgment?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's what I'm having a hard time with
Absolutely.
that.
But that's simply a choice free from judgment, right? And we know that the choice is our gift that has been given to us by God. It is the gift of heaven, right? That we we use through the power of judgment, through the choice for judgment, to create the world of separation. We can use that same choice to generate experience without judgment, which is the experience of heaven.
Okay, and that's where the discernment comes in, and that's the
That's where discernment is.
differentiation.
Discernment simply says, because it's
Yeah,
neutrality, just
yeah,
as you said, Tom, right? It's neutrality. It's the innocence, right? That's where this is really what this course is about the return to innocence, right?
yeah.
Because that's what we are in the absence of our choice to judge.
Mm. I thank you. I appreciate the clarification on this.
Mm,
This
You're
makes
so welcome. You're
a,
so
a
welcome.
big difference.
I'm aware of the time, Brandy. You've got your hand up, and I want to hear what you have to say. And I'm just flagging up that we're nearly at time. Okay, and we're where people need to go. But Brandy, love to hear from you in this space as well.
I just wanted to add what's helpful, what you said to me about allowing the feelings first before I judge myself because I'm judging. So just showing compassion to the anger and the sadness and the fear kind of is helpful, has been helpful for me. That's what my
Mm,
therapist has been saying, the same thing as you. It's just like allow yourself to be angry if something is happening that feels like an injustice or an abuse or a betrayal.
yeah.
And then the forgiveness will be a little bit easier to shift your mind after you show compassion to the feelings. That's all I had.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brandy. It's so important. It's so important. We could do a whole webcast just on that, right? Because there's such a deep nuance around that. Because the temptation, right, is to bring in judgment of the feeling, right? And actually, that is where we're going to go in this course because we're going to be moving into forgiveness within the sacral chakra, which is all about the emotional field of energy and about bringing forgiveness to that. If we're not allowing something in that way, then we have to ask ourselves a question of like, am I judging this? It could be that there's a discernment at place and I'm simply saying no to it, but generally speaking, especially if we are locked into a part of self that is not operating in this band up here, that's not coming from pure discernment and light, if we're locked into an identification with a part that's saying we shouldn't be feeling anger, right? And this is where the whole journey becomes a little bit more nuanced, right? Because we end up with parts who are like, right, I've read the Way of Mastery and the Course in Miracles. I got all the information, right? And this is what Joshua called the spiritual ego, right? It's like, now I know what to do and what all my other parts need as well, right? But of course, that's just another part, right? And all our parts are grounded in judgment. So we end up with a judgmental part that has a spiritual whip that's put to work in the system to bring all the other parts into, self-appointed, by the way, all the other parts into, and the other parts are like, fuck you. Right? And we end up spinning round and round and round in our spiritual journeys. We go round and round and round and round and round. And then we go, wow, nothing's really changing. I'm getting very dizzy. It's like, yeah, because you haven't really first allowed that disillusion out of the part and into love. And only love heals, only love brings that truth, you know? And it's like when I look at and hear certain people's experiences. I hear of Mariana's experience of the light. When I hear of Bodhi's experience this week of these miracles, when I hear and feel Sinead talking about her experience, it's like, oh, there you go. So this is not coming from a part. This is the emergence of self, and self knows how to heal the system. And one of the best ways for us to get in touch with self is through the power of, and the process of forgiveness. So the invitation again this week, and I will post the channeling for people as well, so you can all have the channeling and the transcript from the channeling. I'll get that out today to you. It'll be in the email that comes, and I'll put it on the Facebook group as well. And we're going to work with the same process, the same practice. If you find yourself, as I do sometimes, kind of going like, oh yeah, I don't, or I'll just do a little bit of forgiveness. I'm just going to do that. Oh yeah, I'll just put a bit of forgiveness in the root there. That's it, done. It's like, that's okay, right? You might want to ask yourself the question, like, is there a part here that maybe doesn't want to engage with this? And if so, does it have something it wants to tell me? Like about why it doesn't want to engage in this process? Like, what's it afraid of? What's it afraid might happen? So that could be a good exploration as well. And I'll write that out maybe over the next couple of days and put that on the group as well. All right. And where some of you have to go. We're in time. Enjoy forgiveness this week. And yeah, please do post on the Facebook group if you have any questions or any experiences you want to share and have witnessed. And if you do, I'll be on there. And I look forward to seeing you all next week when we may or may not move on from the root. We'll see. We'll see. But yeah, I just want to bring a focus again. It's really worth listening to the I think Bodhi said that he'd been listening, and Sinead had been listening to that's just the practice, right? The recording of the practice that I took out there. That's actually really beautiful, and I highly recommend that you connect with that and use that as a part of the practice, because it brings together all of the elements of the alchemy that true forgiveness actually is. And I know in myself that I have parts that want to hurry things along. They want to rush. They want to say they don't have time for this. It's only 15 minutes. Listen to the first 7 minutes, and I might even edit it down to make it 7 minutes or something like that and do another one, like a short version, because I know what it's like. But it's very, very, very important to bring together all of the elements for the true alchemy to occur. Otherwise, again, it's just parts kind of spiraling around. Yeah, they love to do that. Let's do change without change. That's what they like. Yeah, we can play at change. We just play it. We'll play at this, but without actually doing it properly. Because that might bring about some changes we're not happy with. So. That's my journey. All right, if you want to unmute yourselves and just say a farewell for now, and I'll see you all next week.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye
Good to
bye.
see you.
See you next week.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye
You're
bye.
welcome.
See you
Bye-bye.
next week.